Hello, everybody, and welcome to How Was Your Race? This is Miguel, and I'm here to welcome you with Peter. Peter and I, we have ran together many times. Uh, we have ran the Monumental Marathon, which is going to be the race that we are featuring today. We have also ran Blue Ridge Mountain Marathon together, Air Force Marathon, Derby Marathon in Louisville, Kentucky. Blue Ridge Mountain Marathon is in Roanoke, Virginia. I left that part out. Air Force Marathon. He was actually the guest on the Air Force Marathon in Dayton, Ohio. That's in September. The race is that. If you want to, you can look back through the catalog there. I don't know what to call it. The previous episodes, and you'll be able to see the Air Force Marathon, and that will also have Peter on there. Peter has ran 38 full marathons and 175 half marathons. This will be his 10th year of running the Monumental in 2026. He has ran both the half marathon and full marathon there. Today we're going to be featuring the Hot Rod Lincoln from Sun King Brewery. It is an Imperial Stout coming in at a nice 12.8%. 18 IBUs. We're going to have to give this one 5 out of 5 medals. It is very delicious. However, it's part of their King's Reserve series, I believe. So it's a little bit harder to acquire. It's not always going to be available. Is it Nope, no, I take that back. It's not part of King's Reserve. So it will be a little bit easier to acquire. The Hot Rod Lincoln is a rich malt with dark brown sugar flavors, barrel aged. Comes in with a nice tart cherry and dark chocolate with oak notes. I will say that the dark chocolate is it's not too bitter on there. It's not very pronounced, and the tart cherry comes in just nice and perfectly balanced. I had this beer for the first time after I ran the Carmel Marathon, which I believe Peter was there as well. I believe at 22. Did you run Carmel in 22 or no?
Let me remember. I've done Carmel, I think almost every year, obviously except the last year because nobody did it the last year. I think it got canceled due to weather. And I may or may not have done it the year before that, but before that, I've done it every year. Actually, 2021, I ran the full. I believe 2022 and 2023, I probably did the half. So yeah, 2022 for sure. I was there. If not the full, then the half.
Okay. So I've only ran that one once, and I ran the full for Carmel. The There's a Sun King location. Oddly enough, both races, the Monumental Marathon, the Sun King is about 10 minute, maybe a 5-10 minute drive because of lights and whatnot. And the Carmel location from the parking garage near the finish line to the parking garage for the Sun King Brewery is also about 5, maybe 10 minutes. It just depends on
So
if the races are
Sun
going
King is Sun King is at the finish line of Carmel. If we're talking about the same Sun King. So Sun King, I believe I'm not gonna say I'm an Indy expert, but I run a lot of races there. So when you go to the Carmel Sun King location, we always sit, at the second level. They have, quote unquote food trucks, so multiple like food vendors that you can order from. You get your beer, you sit at the second level, and you're basically at the finish line. They have a big screen there, and you can watch people finishing
on. Okay.
as you're sitting there drinking and eating. So yeah, that's my favorite part, honestly, about Carmel is that you can finish, go grab a beer, sit at Sun King, and watch people finish. It's literally right at the finish.
Okay. Now that maybe I was just too dumb to figure that out. I had just run a marathon, and I won't say it was my first because by gosh, it was not, but um, it was my first time being at Carmel. So I was a little less familiar with the streets and such. That's a good race. Well, we can't talk too much about Carmel, although that is a great race. I do enjoy it. Um, I didn't go back, but that's just because different reasons, nothing to do with the race itself. Uh, but we
You know
can't
what
keep.
though? I I was gonna say, I think it would be tough to talk about Monumental without mentioning Carmel because I think they're, two of the best races. One is in the fall, one is in the spring. So, Carmel is really a good alternative to Monumental for those, let's say, who want to run a marathon in the spring as opposed to the fall. So, yeah, I think it's a good idea to mention it for sure.
And it's also a lot for some people because Monumental, which we'll probably speak about on that a second time, but Monumental is 15,000, maybe 20,000 runners now. And it's getting close to 20,000, I think.
Yeah,
Whereas
it's getting bigger, somewhere between 10 to 20,000. Yeah.
and Carmel is probably 4,000, I think, maybe 3,000.
Less. I can't tell you how many, definitely less than 10. So yeah, Carmel is smaller. They advertise it as, the race that has all the perks of, a big city marathon, but they still care about you and it's not as crowded and that kind of thing. So you still have kind of the perks of a small marathon, which is, free parking, close parking, all that. So that's how they advertise it is, you're kind of getting a mix of both. The feel of, hey, I'm running a big city marathon, but you're still, not paying $70 to park like I did in Chicago. you know.
Yeah, I remember paying for parking in Chicago. How
I
did you should have paid? I think we paid, maybe I did pay 70. I thought I paid 35.
No, I the reason I know I paid 70 is because and then yeah, I can go off topic, so feel free to stop me, but I stayed with a friend and well, one of the other pacers and he drove. So I was like, "Hey man, since you drove, let me take care of parking." And he's like, "Okay." So, I when I said it, I had no idea how much parking was going to be. So, we're at the parking garage and I look at the thing and it said $70. I'm like, whoa. I mean, I already said I'm paying for parking, so I'm paying for parking, but good Lord, I thought like 10, 20, 30, like you said, 35 maybe.
Oh,
$70. I mean, that's, a marathon registration right there,
I think the 35 was with a discount code. Like, yeah, did you park underneath the,
Yeah, he parked
okay.
underneath. And obviously he drove. I stayed with him. I wasn't gonna tell him where to park. Like I wasn't gonna say,
No.
hey man, I'm gonna pay for parking, but you have to find a lot that's, $30 or less. I was like, okay, park wherever you want. I got it. Parking's on me. Now I didn't know that parking was gonna be $70, but again, I'm fine with it. But yeah, it was like, man, that's Chicago for you.
That that is that is Chicago. I put my name in a hat for New York City again. I've gotten declined every single year, but that's well, if I do New York City, I don't plan on driving. I just plan on flying out there, just relying on public transit because I don't want to drive back from New York after running a marathon. That's just not fun.
Right. My goal is to pace New York, because pacing Chicago is great. Pacers with the big city marathons get really nice perks. Like I remember with Chicago, they gave us, our own heated tent with, security and all that, So I would love to do that same setup for New York if I can get in, and I'll be patient, whenever they decide, hey, he's paced enough marathons, he's consistent, he comes in on time, he's a really good pacer, we'll have him. It's sometimes just a matter of getting lucky and the pace that your pace, the pacer drops off a day or two before the marathon. And you're like, okay, or maybe not a day or two before, maybe like a week or two or a month or two, and you're like, okay, I'm in, I'll fill in. And that's I think what happened with Chicago. And hey, it's a matter of being in the right place at the right time sometimes.
That is a lot of it. But getting back to which, by the way, the subtitle of this show is Tangents. Getting back to Monumental, how did you first hear of Monumental Marathon?
One of my really good friends, who really almost got me into pacing, also kind of told me about Monumental Marathon. But I think now how it comes up, probably how it came up back then and how it comes up now is anytime someone's looking at PR, anytime someone's looking to run their fastest, anytime someone's looking for the flattest and fastest marathon or half marathon around, that almost always has perfect weather. That's how Monumental comes up. So, that's how I tell people about it. I think that's how I was told about it. Oddly enough, I think I've paced it every year. But it's one of those where it's super easy for me at least to, come in on time and make my pace no matter what, because it's just, it's in November. And we can talk in more detail about anything, but yeah, the highlight I think of Monumental for me is it's in November. It's almost never going to be 90 degrees. It would have to be really a freak show of a year for you to have a 90-degree day in November. And it's almost always never going to be, -10. It's not, December, January, February, so it's almost never going to be freakishly cold. I've done it nine. I think this will be my 10th year, and it's almost always going to be like that perfect range between 30, 40 to maybe 50s, maybe 60s. So I think the coldest I've ever done it one time, it was like in the 20s, and that was, unusual, but even then it wasn't horrible. And there was one time again, it was just really weird. It was like a high of 70 that day. But even then, it's not, that bad. You're not talking 80s or 90s like some, you know, spring, fall, or even summer races. And you're not talking 10 degrees or less if you're doing a race in January, God forbid.
Yeah, I remember there's only been 1 year that I've ran it where I had really bad weather. That was in, I was trying to pull up the exact date because when you start talking, because that's the thing, you come in and you train all summer for your marathon. So you're typically going to have better weather for outdoor running, better than January, February, March, if you live in the, well, Midwest or most of America for that matter, other than the West Coast or Southeast. You're going to be training in better weather during the summer, and with that warm weather, you're going to increase your blood volume typically because your body does that physiologically. Your body just does that physiologically. Did I just mispronounce that word horribly?
I'm
I,
I'm going with it.
okay,
It sounds fine to me.
we're yes, we're running with that one.
Sure.
But the so you're coming, and then you come in that race. Is the half is 125 feet of elevation change, which I consider skateboard flat. And then the full, okay, this says this is, I had the wrong source. I think the full is only 300 feet of elevation change, which is similar to the Chicago Marathon. Chicago is like 325 feet of elevation change.
I was gonna say I can check my Strava if you want.
I'm trying to check my Garmin, but my Garmin has my watch, which the source on it right now for that race is my watch, which is the barometer, which is fine and dandy until you factor in that over the course of 5.5 hours, because that's why I ran it that year, that the weather pattern can change significantly. So your pressure altitude, your barometer can change significantly in 5.5 hours, thus throwing off the actual elevation.
So you're right on. I just checked my Strava, 295 feet of elevation gain for the full marathon. I paced 355 that year and I came in at 354.37.
Nice. I paced 5:30, came in 5:29.16.
Nice. Way to go.
Hey man, it's I that that time I would give my firstborn for right now. No, maybe depending on what day of the week it is. Some days he tries me. Some days he tries me.
So it looks like, because I was curious based on what you said, Chicago's actually flatter by a little bit. So Monumental's the high 200s, Chicago's the low 200s elevation gain. But, keep in mind, Chicago, you're not guaranteed an entry, where Monumental, you're guaranteed an entry if you choose to run it. So that's, I think, the difference.
Yeah, it's a much better, and also it's much more affordable to do Chicago, Indianapolis.
Exactly.
Do you well you paced. Do you remember ever glancing at the what is that? the cost to entry for registering for when you want to register for Monumental?
Um, I don't, but from memory, I can tell you it's pretty standard. Like, it's about the same. I mean, now if you go register for a marathon, it's almost always you're gonna look at if you're doing the half, you're somewhere between at the very, very low end, I think you're at like 60 or 70, maybe 80 for a half, and then for a full, you're talking 90, maybe 100, up to maybe 120. If just again, I can look it up obviously now and see what it is. It's not till November, so we're probably still in like the cheaper registration prices, but I would bet you, and I can look it up, but I'll bet you it's probably somewhere between like 90 to $100 or so.
It's probably I know on which is too late now, and don't wait till next year. Don't wait till next year to register if you're thinking about it. But I know on New Year's they typically have a really discounted registration.
Yeah, but like you said, it's not, yes, they do, but it's not worth waiting till next year to do it. It's not like you're not going to save an astronomical amount. A little more for the full than I just said. I just looked it up, but the half is right on. So, I said, 80, 90, 100 for the half. It's 95 for the half. The full is actually 145. Now, keep in mind, prices of everything have gone up. So, it's very possible that it was more like 80 or 90 for the half, and now it's 95. And it's very possible it was like 100 to 120 for the full last year, and now it's 145 because I'm a race director myself, and I can tell you, not really necessarily just defending the race, but in a way, yeah, I can tell you shirts and food, and if you've heard of, tariffs and everything that race directors have had to deal with thrown at them in the past year or two, has impacted prices again of everything. So that's why you're going to see registration prices, be slightly higher. I personally, it doesn't bother me. If I'm running a marathon, to me, you can't put a price on that finish line feeling, right? So unless the registration price all of a sudden goes up to $500, which it's not going to, if you're telling me I'm going to pay, 120 instead of 100 or 140 instead of 120, that's not going to break the bank when we're talking, a monumental thing that you're doing. I'm using their word.
Nice tie-in.
Right, right.
Nice tie-in. I mean, it's and you're right. For most people, that's not going to be the and I don't think I've ever really mentioned the price in my other episodes. I can't recall. But yes, it's most of these races are going to be if you the earlier you register, the cheaper it's going to be. If you wait till the day of, it's going to be really expensive. And you're going to wish you would
Right.
have signed up earlier. Um, and yes, look, he said it, I said it. We'll always say it. If you're considering doing it this year, don't put it off just because of if I wait till New Year's, I'll get a discount because there's a possibility that next year that won't be the case. Or right now it's 145. Next year on New Year's, it might only be 125. But then next year in November, you get invited to a wedding or whatever happened. Things happen. Um,
Yep.
all types of things do happen. So just go ahead and if you're considering it, whatever it is, do it.
That's a really, really good point. I've had so many times where um, I'm like, you know what? I really want to run this race. And the times I have, exactly what you said. The next year, either they move the date to a date that I absolutely can't make, or yeah, something comes up, or something changes with the race, or let's say, there was a race that we had really good friends who lived there, and we went and stayed with them and ran the race, and then they moved. So yeah, if you have an opportunity to run a race, I agree. Don't put it off because yeah, you never know what's going to happen. I've had races that the whole race went away. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Monumental. I would almost
Oh
bet
no,
all
no.
my money that that's not going to happen. But you know what? I'll give you an example though. A race in Indiana. Um, if you've heard of the Indy Half at Fort Bend,
Yes.
yeah, I've paced that many years. I haven't done it in the last year or two. Actually, the same weekend this year. I ran a 12-hour endurance run, and I ran 55 miles, and it was a lot of fun. But that was the same weekend. It was the first weekend in October as the Indy Half at Fort Bend. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. But the reason I mentioned that is because that used to have a full marathon. So if you ever thought like, oh, I'm gonna run that full marathon, but not this year. I'm gonna put it off and maybe do it next year or the year after. Well, guess what? At that point, you would have probably missed out because they just decided they don't want to do the full anymore. Again, likely will never happen with Monumental because it's one of those races where they're seeing more and more people sign up. It's getting
Yes.
more and more popular. And like you said, Miguel, earlier, you know, it was small and now it's getting bigger and bigger every year. So yeah, if anything, they'll add a distance. They're not going to remove a distance. But with other races, it's very possible. Another one that happened to me with Youngstown. I don't know if anyone has heard of the Youngstown Marathon, as far northeast as you can possibly go in Ohio without being in Pennsylvania. I ran the Youngstown Marathon, and the following year, right after I ran it, they decided, you know what, the marathon is not really that popular. We're just going to keep a half. So the marathon went away.
Oh wow. That's that's unfortunate. I mean, and that does happen, unfortunately, and it's really bad when it happens to the race. That well, we did Whiskey Daddle. Did you do Whiskey Daddle?
No, never heard of it.
Okay, well, you'll never be able to run it now because the I ran I ran it twice. I ran the half and the full in that order. But the year that I ran the full was the last year they were doing it. I got to talk to the RD about it. Um, don't want to go into details because I don't want to because I try. He told me why, and there was reasons. Basically, he couldn't afford it. The cost of putting on the race was more than the cost of that the between the sponsors and the participants. There was a few small but big factors that he couldn't afford to have the racing. So if you was want to do the Whiskey Dad on Peoria, Illinois, which was a really nice race, and it was the same weekend as the Chicago Marathon, same day as the Chicago Marathon, it's no longer there. So, but speaking of it getting bigger, Monumental getting larger and larger throughout the years, this year the expo was the largest I've ever seen it because it was taking up two halls in the Indianapolis Expo Center. How do you feel about the expo? Because you have a lot of races under your belt. You've done large races and small races. How was the expo for you?
Yeah, I personally like big expos because I always look at it not for me. I run a lot of races, so I would be okay just, going, grabbing my stuff and going home, and that's okay because I probably have another marathon next weekend. But again, I don't look at it for me. I look at it as all those people there that are running their first half or first full. And I was actually one of the speakers at the Monumental Marathon. Not every year I ran it, but probably out of the 9 years I've done it, I would say at least six or seven. I was a speaker at the expo. And specifically like speaking about pacers and, how do you run with a pacer and all that. And I can tell you, I love big expos. I think the Flying Pig probably has one of the best expos. Let's talk about races that have really good expos. I think Air Force Marathon has a really good expo, which I think, you and I talked about that last time. Monumental's getting there. I don't think it's quite there yet. Like you said, the race is getting bigger, the expo's getting bigger. But yeah, I would love to see it be at the same level as Flying Pig and Air Force Marathon and those other races that have really nice expos. It doesn't have to, every race is known for its things that are really cool about it. And Monumental's not like, oh, it has the best expo of all their marathons, not necessarily, but it would be great if that becomes a thing. Because again, you think about it for all the people that may be doing it as their only marathon, whether just only marathon period or only marathon in Indiana, whatever they're doing, or only half or first half or, whatever. It would be great to have them experience, a lot of vendors and a lot of giveaways and, games if they're parents and they're bringing their kids and there's stuff, for the kids and toys and yeah, why not?
And Yeah, it's getting larger. This year I made the mistake. I got there a little too late because I was actually recording episodes. So I got there a little bit late, and I already had everything I needed. So I didn't feel the need to walk around the expo as much since I was already pressed for time and I had everything I needed for the race. But I feel like they I was looking at the size. It's 90,000 square feet now, the space for the expo. And as you walk in, they have you come in, there's Pacer area, Pacer booth. You can come talk to the Pacers, ask them questions about, a lot of us are knowledgeable in the race. So we've ran it 3, 4, 5, 10 times, or we've just ran it general 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 plus races. So for those that are newer, say you're coming from the half to the full and you're listening to this podcast, or somebody sent you the link, hey, I know, me, you've been running, like, let's do this as a goal. If you have questions, some of the Pacers are also run coaches. They're also certified run coaches. Others were just experienced, so we can give you the pass on the knowledge that we have. But at the Monumental, I feel that the expo is well laid out. There's other races featured. So if you're if you're from Indiana, especially, or if you're from, like, say, the 5-state area, Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, Illinois, if you're from that area, you're going to see other races being featured, such as the International Marathon, the Detroit International, Air Force Derby. Derby is in Louisville, Kentucky, Air Force, Ohio. You might see Blue Ridge, which is Kentucky. You might see Seven Bridges, which is Tennessee. You might see Route 66, Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Bass Pro Shops, which is Springfield, Missouri. So you'll see other races there. Grand Rapids, which is Grand Rapids, Michigan. You'll see other races at the expo, but also you'll be able to get, if you showed up with nothing, no, you forgot your clothes somehow, the airline company lost your luggage, you would be able to leave fully clothed for the race. Now this year, where do you stay? Where do you? Because I found out um, that if you stay at the Courtyard or the Marriott, if you stay at the Marriott over there, which is north of Victory Field, where the Indianapolis Indians baseball team plays, I found out that you can actually there's headways, pedestrian bridges from there over to the convention center. Do you stay downtown, or where do you stay for the race?
For Monumental, we always stay at the West End just because that's where we get like a discount, I guess. The race gets a discount, so they pass it along. So we just get, slightly cheaper rooms, I guess. And not saying they're, really cheap, but just for the convenience of the location, at the Westin, because that's right at the finish line. It makes it really nice. So it really, like you said, it depends, just like any race. I think the closer you stay, obviously, the more convenient it is, but the more expensive it is. Obviously, if you stay outside of the city, it's going to be significantly cheaper, but then you have to deal with, driving in, parking, finding parking, paying for parking, that kind of thing. So it just depends. I've done both. I've paid the premium to stay right at the start or right at the finish. But I've also like, that's too expensive, and I've stayed further. The one that comes to mind is Aspen Valley Marathon in Colorado. The race starts in Aspen and then, all the way on top of the mountain and runs down. If you want to stay in Aspen, the cheapest room I could find, and I'm not talking a fancy room, the cheapest room I could find was $2,300 a night.
What?
So I told my wife, I said, at that point, I would rather sleep on the sidewalk than pay that much for a room. So, yeah, I booked a room. I found a room, at a town nearby, and it was the cheapest I could find. It was like $200, but it was like, an hour away, and I didn't care. I woke up earlier and I drove an hour. But yeah, I was like, no way. I'm not gonna pay that much.
Oh wow, that's wild. Oh no, there that's not I can't no, that's not happening. That would
Exactly.
never. Now okay. And I know for this race, a lot of people will park by the zoo for out there in listener land. The zoo, from from the zoo to the convention center is probably about a half a mile, and I think parking at the zoo is around $5.
Oh
They
wow.
have they have a very large parking lot. Go figure. It's the zoo. They no, I'm sorry, it's a mile. Well, according to Google Maps, they do this weird thing. If you park here, but then walk all the way over, it's about a half to three-quarters of a mile. There's a weird walking thing they have you doing here for some reason. So
It's a
it's
good
about,
warm up either way.
yeah. Now this year, and that one thing with the growth of this race, the race used to start in front of the Capitol building, which was really it was a beautiful start line, I felt. However, it was very congested.
Yep.
And they moved the start line this year. The start line now is in front of the JW Marriott. Well, it's in front of the Marriott on West Street. What did you think about the starting area this year?
Yeah, I personally would rather have less congestion at the start, even if you sacrifice scenery, because I'll be honest, I feel like most people at the start are not really there, looking at scenery. They're more, worried about um what do I do with my, throwaway clothes, or I want to make sure I go to the bathroom right before. You're more worried about logistics at that point. I would go more for scenery at the finish. So if I'm a race director, I'm more concerned with the finish line area being really nice because people are going to finish and take a ton of pictures. You have your photographers at the finish. At the start, again, maybe it's just me, but my opinion is I would go more for convenience where I can have more porta potties. Yeah, just make sure there's less congestion. Yes, the Monumental back in the day, years ago, used to have a reputation of you know, the start line was a cluster. And I think they heard that and they made changes for the better, I think. So I would rather definitely have less congestion. And if I start by a hotel as opposed to by the Capitol building, I'm okay with that.
Okay. Yeah, it's and the porta potty down with the start, it's less congested. I feel that there was with there being less congestion, there was more space for the porta potties. I felt there was more. I don't know if they're just better laid out, better spaced, but I felt like the porta potties was better this year.
I think so. But then again, do you ever feel like with races you can have 7 million porta potties and you still feel like there's a line and there's not enough? There's that.
Yeah, I think yeah. Okay, so the race. Okay, I want to point out a few because I like to call myself the unofficial tour guide. I think most pacers are unofficial tour guides, especially if we've repeated the race five, six, seven, 10 times.
Right.
So the race now starts at Victory Field, which is the AAA ballpark for the affiliate team of the Pittsburgh Pirates. For those that are familiar with that and who care, but even if you don't care, you still got the knowledge. So take us through the first few miles of the Monumental Marathon.
So just like any race, I think, you're gonna start with crowds around you, especially like I said, I've paced it. I think every year I've done it. And you're it's just going to be crowded at the beginning, especially the first few miles. I always tell people when I pace, and you probably do too, like, hey, the first mile just, is always the hardest. Don't base everything off of it. But, we use it to learn. So if we're a few seconds slower because there's crowds, we're not going to stress. We're just going to be a few seconds faster the second mile and we'll make up the time. Like it'll be fine. If everyone's excited and we ended up with a lot of people around us that are faster and we end up with a few seconds faster mile, then we can dial it back and relax the second mile. But yeah, Monumental, again, just like any other marathon, I don't think it's that much different. It's going to be crowded, especially the first mile, and then gradually get, less and less. It is, a really nice I think it's a really good amount of crowds. You know, unlike Chicago, I know we mentioned Chicago. Everyone always thinks just because I paced Chicago, it's my all-time favorite marathon. It's really not because it stays crowded the whole time. And as a pacer, you know, you like having a group and talking to your group and getting to know your group. And you really can't do that in a race like Chicago. Man, God forbid you stop at a water stop for 2 seconds and you lose everybody. It's just yeah, it's almost too crowded. You spend the whole race saying, "Excuse me, I'm sorry." Where in Monumental, again, that might be the first mile, maybe two, but after that, it kind of, you know, you really have a group with you. Um, I like that, you know, you're running downtown, you run by, you know, that monument, you know, that roundabout, that big roundabout, and you do that twice on the way out and the way back. Um,
What?
and trying to think.
No, you only
So
do that once.
I thought it was twice. I know on the way out, I thought you run back, or maybe you just see it on the way back.
You see, I'm sorry. You see it on the way out. It's the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. It's about
Yeah.
328 feet tall. You see it on the way out, and then on the way back, you get about 2 blocks. So you see it for like well, from mile 10 to mile 12. So you see it for 2.5 miles on the way back, but then you make a right-hand turn 2 blocks before it.
Okay, maybe that's what it is. Because I remember I know you see it twice, but maybe let me look. I'm gonna pull up the map because I thought you run because I have here, I'm gonna pull up the map real quick.
You're on
It
Meridian
is. It's
on
right
the way
here.
back.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. You run by it on the way up, and then on the way back, you're like a block or two from it, so you see it on the way back, but you're
Yeah.
not yeah, you don't run by it. You're right. But I remember that you see it twice. But yeah, so on the way out, you know, you run right by it on that circle, and then you kind of see it on the way back. But yeah, if you're running the half, you know, you're downtown the first and last few miles. I mean, you go north, you're not going that far north, I guess. Where if you're running the full, that's where you go really north, and you have, I guess you have some hills. I know it's almost a joke, because like you said, you know, under 300 feet of elevation is still pancake flat. But I think I want to say mile 16 or maybe 18. It's been a couple years since I ran the full, but there's like a little hill. Again, if you've done any race that's hilly, like, you know, you mentioned Blue Ridge Marathon in Roanoke, Virginia, you know, this is nothing compared to that or compared to any hilly marathon. But, you know, it's worthy to mention that if you do the full, you might, you know, see a hill at mile 16 or 17 or 18. I can't remember exactly where, but, you know, you're like, oh, there's a hill in this race. But that's, you know, you kind of go outside of the city a little bit, and you do kind of a big loop heading north, and then you head back.
Now, okay, so I'm going to take you to a few parts I remember. Do you remember running alongside through Madison Avenue? So as you go out, you go around Soldier Sailors Monument, which is around mile two, 2.5, and then you make a right around you make a left and you make a right, and you're going on a diagonal street where it's kind of like the nightlife scene, and there's the Coke building is there. The Coca on your left hand side, you'll see the Coca-Cola building. Do you remember that area?
Vaguely. And keep in mind, I run a lot of marathons, so you know
That
they
is
all
true.
start to merge together at some point. But I vaguely remember what you're referring to. Yeah.
Now you stay with the half for quite a ways.
You stay with the half. I can tell you. So it's right. The split happens, I want to say like almost half of the half-ish. So when you keep heading north, where the split happens is right almost along the river, where the full keeps heading north and east along I think it's called the Fall Creek. So I guess it's a creek slash river, but the full keeps heading along the creek northeast, where the half just then kind of makes that almost U-turn type of thing and starts heading back south. So it's really, you know, almost half of the half when the half starts heading back, and the full just keeps going north and does that big loop. I can tell you exact miles if you want, but from memory, I want to say it's around like 7 or 8 or something like that.
Okay. I know I remember being past the six. That's a
Yeah.
different story that well, okay, I'll share it here. There was a
Why
there's
not?
a there's a house. I know the exact house, and it's on the right hand side around mile 6.2 or 6.6 or 6.68. And one year I was running, and it was earlier on, and I used to donate plasma, and I would donate on Mondays because Monday was my long run day when I used to train more. But then I started running more halves on Saturday. So then Monday morning, I didn't have anything to do. Well, I went to go donate plasma instead. And then I would run on Saturday and I kind of have stomach issues. And then I'd donate, run, stomach issues, donate, run, stomach issues. I think this is 18 was when this happened. And I couldn't do the math and put two and two together until I realized that by donating plasma is what carries water through your blood stream. So the reason I was having the stomach issues was that my body literally could not carry enough water to the muscles. So I was having stomach issues. I was having GI issues because I wasn't dehydrated, but I was dehydrated because my body couldn't deliver the water that it had in the stomach and the intestines. So I'm pacing and I'm coming in. I'm doing really well, but I'm having the stomach issues, and all of a sudden my stomach just said, "No, you're not." And it grabbed my stomach, grabbed my intestines, and said, "Nope." And I stopped, and I was like, "This, my day's over." I don't like. I mean, I could have finished still, but on time, out of the question because there's no porta potties around. Well, actually there were, but I would have to walk all the way there very slowly. I look
That
over
was
and
a
this,
Monumental.
yes, monumental.
Hmm.
So I look over and there's this gentleman. He looks at me. He's on him and his wife, I assume, are clapping for people and doing the golf clap, basically, whatever. We still appreciate him. And he looks at me and I look at him and he just nods his head. So I go over and I go inside his house and his kids, he has like a kid's dirty diaper somewhere. Like it's not like out and open, but it was balled up or whatever. But I don't know, something happened, and he goes, "Sorry about my kid's diaper," and I was like, "Dude, right now I will change your kid's diaper. I just have to take care of this." And he's like, "Yep, you're good." So I went in there and I handled my biz, and I got everything take care of, cleaned up all that jazz, and I got back on course. And
Wow.
and I know that is where the that is still on the full course. So that's how I know that 668 is still on the full course. And there's a porta potty there. Then after that porta potty, you go about a mile and a half, and then there's another porta potty, and that's where the split is because you make the
Yep.
half makes a left to go around that. I think there's a church right there, and the full goes straight. And that's where the church is. That's where the porta potties are, and that's where I think I think they have some type of endurance stuff there. I know they typically do at there's a football field or lacrosse field right beside a church. They typically do there. That's at 6. So yeah, they just have water and
There, I
uh,
just pulled it up since I have all the data readily available to me. So it is 7. Oh, I was right. Just before set, like almost exactly 7.5, maybe like 7.4, where the split
okay.
is.
So once you get there, and then the Monumental is still a large race for the full. So you get rid of all the halfers, which is nice for the marathoners. But you're not alone, but it's definitely well thinned out at that point, I felt.
Just like I think any, no different than any half or full. Once the half splits off, it's gonna thin out for the full. You're not alone by any means. I've done fulls that are really, really small. I always joke, there was a full well, was it Mill Race Marathon, also in Indiana. As you can
Columbus.
tell, I'm not one that does one per state. I've done probably every Ohio and every Indiana marathon. But Mill Race Marathon, it's two loops. And I can tell you the half is super fun. Man, that full, once we started the second loop, it was very, very empty. But luckily I was pacing 350 for that one. And luckily I had this girl who ran with me the entire race. And I'll tell you, by the end, we were best friends. I mean, you run 3 hours and 49 minutes with someone and you talk about family and work and life and just everything. So, but I'm glad she was there because I'll tell you, when it's such a small race, the last thing you want is to run a full marathon by yourself. I mean, that would get boring. So, it would be nice to have somebody. Now, with Monumental, yeah, it's big enough, I think, that odds are you're gonna have someone else there that, you're not gonna be by yourself. But yeah, I've done races where, the full had like 100 people or less. And yeah, you could very well end up running the whole thing by yourself.
Okay. N- Okay, so we're going out. We've already gone past the split. We've gone past, you see the state fairgrounds, the fairgrounds. And you do the out and back. You're coming in. You come through Butler. I don't know if you're familiar with Butler University. You're try, you're in Rocky Ripple. I've never heard of Rocky Ripple, but I felt like running through Butler was beautiful. It's I believe they made the Sweet 16 a few years ago in basketball. And by a few
Um,
years ago, it could be 8 years.
yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, you're coming down now. Okay, so here goes a we speak of halves, fulls mainly here because most fulls have the half component. But there's one feature that's unofficial. Do not take this as Miguel the pacer. Just take this as Miguel the podcast host. If you are running the half marathon, they have a sweeper time, but that sweeper time is not quite accurate because once you get to mile, and I'm going to have Peter look this up where the half joins back up with the full. Just
I already have it.
okay. If you can follow the route on your phone, if you can follow the map, even if you fall behind the halftime, once you get to what mile is that for the full
So
or the
the
half?
full and yeah, good question. The full and the half merge back. For the full, it's at 20, just over 23 and a half. Let's say 23.6.
Okay.
Which means if I'm doing my math right, you're about 2.5 miles from the finish, which is the same for the half. So you're talking 10 and a half ish for the
Yeah.
half. So 23 and a half, 10 and a half
So
is when they merge back together.
okay. So if you can make it back there, if you're doing the half, if you can follow the map on your phone to 10 and a half, you'll start to come over overpass. And then on the right, the half or the fulls are coming in. And that's when you're going to be back on protected roads. And that's when you're going to be back on with aid stations. So it's not from the race. The race didn't tell me to say this. The race probably won't be happy if they found out I said this, but I'll deal with that when it happens, if it happens. Also, I'll be like, oh my God, y'all know me. So like, I don't know. But it's kind of like cease and desist. I'm like, oh my God, they recognized me. Also, I gotta quit saying that. But at that point, um, it's basically all down. Yeah, I think it's all downhill from that point when the half merges with the full.
I can look. I mean, in all honesty, the whole race is flat. So I don't know.
Yeah,
To be clear, when you say downhill, we're talking very slight. But let me look at the elevation chart and I can tell you.
it, and let's see that as you look. I just want to remind. everybody that for some people, especially if you're like a 4 hour and a half, an overpass hill at mile 12 could be a really big hill if you're a 4 hour half marathoner. If you're 130 half marathoner, an overpass hill, it's probably going to be totally different. That's not to say that any. I mean, I've known Peter for gosh 8 9 years. I know that he congratulates everybody. I mean, we are the cheer squad international. Like we are to help you on. That's why we are Pacers. But coming from there, as I'm trying to look at my map, which isn't the best, it looks like it's varying between probably about
Yeah, I mean, once
10 or
you get
15 feet.
to yeah, so like I said earlier, it was there it is. I was right. So mile just after you hit mile marker 15 is where you start the quote unquote climb. Now, we're talking um from 720 to 77, I mean 50 feet up. So again, not, it's not an insane amount, but we're talking a hill that's like 50 feet up, and then you go back down the 50 feet. So it's like an overpass or something. I mean, it's nothing to write home about. Once you get to the bottom, so you're at, let's say, 20, um, mile 20, I mean, the rest is really almost, 100% flat, just like the rest of the race. I mean, you have very small rolling hills, if you even can call them that. But yeah, I mean, it's very, very flat. Now, yeah, once you get to 24, you're right. The last 2 miles are net down. Now, again, we're talking by, you're gonna laugh when I tell you, by like 10 feet net down. So, I wouldn't really call that anything significant, but yeah, I mean, it's not up. It's all relatively flat.
Okay. Um, and the one, so okay, so you're coming in. We've coming over the overpass. We're looking at the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. Soldiers and Sailors, you make a right, then you make a left. Can you take me through that last? What is that? 3/4 of a mile?
Let's see. And obviously, yeah, to be clear, the last 3/4 of a mile for the half and the full is going to be the same. And
That is true.
uh,
While he pulls that up, for those listening out there, if you're in the half, when you get back with the full, move to the left. Get that now we used to have 2 lanes, now we have 3 lanes of traffic. Get to the far left. The full marathoners, a lot of those people are trying to qualify for Boston, New York, Chicago, or any of there's several other races that you have to qualify for, or you get preferred placement for qualifying, or they're doing PRs, which I'm not saying that you're not doing a PR. That's not to take away from anybody else, but it's purely a traffic and hazard issue. If you're running a 12-minute mile and somebody is trying to pass you running a 7-minute mile, the mixture of the two creates a hazard. It's not that I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't want to slow down either person who's trying to PR. That's not my goal either way. However, if somebody's running 5 minutes per mile faster than you and they get tripped up be, because there's congestion for whatever reason, then both of you could get injured and it would not be good for anybody involved.
yeah, so it's never a bad idea to be mindful, whether you're the fast guy or whether you're the slow guy or whether you're whatever. I mean, the one race that's really known for that, where you want to be mindful, is hot chocolate. If you've ever done any of the hot chocolate races, when you have a 5K and now they have a 10K and a 15K and they all merge together at the end. Yeah, I mean, I pace. You have people that just do it for fun to get the jacket and they're walking, and like you said, when you try to mix, walkers and runners and fast runners and slow runners and fast walkers and slow walkers. Yeah, it's always good, no matter who you are in that categorization, to be mindful of your surroundings and just kind of be aware. The worst thing you can do is just kind of, again, no matter your speed, is to take up the road and just pretend that you're the only buddy, the only one there. And that's where you have, yeah, safety issues, people running to each other. So yeah, just kind of be mindful, like, hey, I'm going to stay to the right, I'm going to stay to the left, I'm going to pass here. Hey, I'm passing on your left, whatever, just to, um, yeah, it's always, just being courteous. So to answer your question on Monumental, once you start head, so, we said 23 and a half for the full, 10 and a half-ish for the half. You start heading south, and then you just kind of head straight line south all the way to almost 26, before you get to almost to that, monument like we talked about, but right before you get to it, which is on Meridian Street, right before you get to it, you make a right, and that's where you hit, well, 26 for the full. You would be at almost 13 for the half, and then you make a left, and then yeah, you're almost to Washington, and you basically finish. So you have a couple of turns, towards the end, but obviously, not like crazy sharp turns or anything, just a couple turns before you hit that finish line. And yeah, it's a fun one. Highly recommended. I always say, people ask me like, "Oh, what's the best marathon to do? You've done so many. Which one should I do? What's the best one?" And I almost always say, it depends on your definition of best. If by best you mean I want one that's flat and fast and, almost always has good weather, then honestly, Monumental is the one. But if you want one that's unique and you want to run to Canada and back, maybe do Detroit. If you want one that's really tough and hilly and you say, I ran America's toughest road marathon, then maybe do the Blue Ridge Marathon in Roanoke, Virginia. So it depends on what your definition of best is. Every marathon's unique. And obviously this one is too. So it just depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah, and that's very true. I've ran. Did you do Jack and Jill by chance?
No, it's still there's a lot on my bucket list.
Okay.
Um,
Um,
one.
the Jack and Jill race, that was. It's hard for me to say that it was. It's hard for me to fully compare it to Blue Ridge, but it was probably because you're running. You're in Seattle. You're about 30 miles east of Seattle, Washington, and it's a point-to-point race, and you're coming down an old rail trail, and some of those views are just beautiful. And you look over this huge valley, and it's just and it's a July race, I believe, and it's the weather almost every year is pretty good weather because it's a PNW, but the weather's just beautiful, and you know it's so lush and so green. However, if you flip that up and you go with let's say Lost Dutchman in Phoenix, Arizona, I think that's a February race. That's going to be completely different. But that's not to say that the Flying Dutchman is a bad race because it's in Arizona in February, or Cowtown, which is in Texas in February, and Fort Worth. But there's a lot of races that have beautiful, different best reasons why they could be best. Sorry to still, I don't know, but I'll pick it back off of you on that one. I feel
Right.
so. Okay, we're coming in. How do you feel? How is the finish area? How is that for you? The welcoming area, the runners reunite, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah, I like the finish area. I think it's one of the better ones. When you have pizza, you can check your result. Trying to think all the stuff they have. If you've done like the challenge, if you've done the half at Fort Bend and the full or half at Monumental, you get like an extra challenge medal. You obviously have vendors that shall sell shirts and that kind of stuff. You can see your friends finish. You have, beer at the finish line, obviously. With I'll say this, the one thing I remember from Monumental, if you see a really long line, don't get discouraged for the beer line, it does go fast. So you look at the beer line and you're like, man, I'm going to be in line for an hour. It really goes quick. It's like 2, 3 minutes and you're at the end of the line. But I don't know why the line just looks really bad. So don't get discouraged. Get your beer. Don't ever go home with a beer ticket. That is such a waste. Um, but yeah, and obviously I'm, biased because, like I said, most of the time we stay at the Westin, so I hop in, quick shower and then come back down and get to hang out with everybody and say congrats on all the PRs. There's always a lot of PRs at Monumental. So yeah, I think it's one of the better ones. Is it, the best finish line party? No. If you want to know what's the best race that I've seen, like the best finish line party of all the marathons and halves that I've done, Rehoboth Beach Seashore Marathon. I think that's what it's called. It's in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. That one is absolutely insane. I mean, you have a dance party and people are out dancing for hours. You basically have like all you can drink. It is insane. I mean, I'll show you some videos next time I see you. You wouldn't believe it. It looks more like a bar at 2 a.m. when they're about ready to kick people out than it does a marathon.
Yeah.
But that's not normal. Monumental is definitely more normal. Yeah, they have Domino's Pizza, I think, and that kind of stuff. So, at Monumental, so it's definitely, yeah, it's good. I enjoy it. Enjoyed it last year. I'm looking forward to it this year.
Okay. The I keep mispronouncing Rodeo Beach,
Rehoboth.
Rehoboth, Rehoboth Beach, Rehoboth Beach Marathon. Amy, she's also a pacer for Monumental. She was she was a guest on that episode for that marathon.
Yeah, and don't feel bad, by the way. I mean, it took me running the thing before I actually knew how to pronounce it. So yeah, don't feel bad. I mean, it's a mouthful. It looks weird. It doesn't. You don't say it like you think you would. It's a weird one. But I'll tell you, every race is unique for a reason, and that one is the finish area. It is incredible. They have like an all-you-can-eat buffet. I mean, it's insane. It is not normal.
Now, we'll my one of my favorite finish lines is I'm gonna have to say it's going to be um oh Blue Ridge Mountain Marathon. I don't know why I couldn't think of it. I have it tattooed on me. Blue Ridge Mountain Marathon, Roanoke, Virginia, partially because they have ice cream sandwiches.
They have ice cream sandwiches there. How have I never seen them?
They at least when I did it, what year was that? That had to be was it last year? I don't know if it
Of
was
course,
20.
the one year that I skipped.
I'm trying I'm trying to think if it was 25 or 20 because I did it in 25 and I think I did it in 22. But 20 I can't remember the finish. I can't remember. Like you said, a lot of times you do them so many times you get them mixed up. I remember going, they had a ice cream truck, and I said, "Oh, which one do we get?" I did how much are they? And the guy goes, "Oh, it's free if you did the race." I was like, "Oh, I did do the race." He goes, "Okay." I said, "Well, I'll take an ice cream bar." He
Oh
goes,
yeah, it's right
"Which one
by
do
the
you
beer
want?"
truck. Yes,
Yes.
I
Oh,
did have that. Yes, I don't think I had an ice cream sandwich. I did have an ice cream, and yes, you're right. I do remember that, and that was awesome.
you had a choice. Which speaking of we shot out Sun King earlier. Speaking of Blue Ridge Mountain Marathon on Virginia, I want to give a shout out to Parkway Brewing Company. They're going to be that beer is going to be featured for that race when I feature Blue Ridge Marathon.
Yeah, that's a good one. I would definitely have a lot to say about that one. I was an ambassador for that race for a year or two, and
Oh,
obviously I've done the half, I've done the full, I've done it many times, so I can probably talk about that one, almost as much as you. I think you and I have experienced it, and it's a tough one, but it's unique too. But honestly, I feel like every marathon I've done, I can also talk about for a while, just like Monumental, because you know I like to get the full experience of every marathon. I don't just go run, go home. Like I like to, like you said, I enjoy the post-race beer and the food and the party and I really look at the course and take pictures and go back and look at my pictures. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I did see that. So, you know, I don't just go run the marathon, go home. I really try to get the full experience of every marathon. I want to be able to remember them forever.
They are. I have all. Well, I have a few. My racks got full, so I need to put up another rack. Every every medal, um, which you can see in that in my background. Every time I look, I can grab one of my medals and I can touch them, and a memory of that race is contained in that medal. And it gets confusing when there's Derby and Derby and Monumental when there's 10 of each, but I can still, remember, oh, that year I paced it with this person, or that year I stopped and did this, or that year I met this person. Somebody I met in the 21 Blue Ridge Marathon. I'm running Freedom's Run. That's one of the races I'm signed up for already this year. The Freedom's Run in that's going to be my West Virginia full,
Oh, nice.
and that's going to be. I made friends with a lady when I ran Blue Ridge in 21, and this will be her 50th state.
Cool.
So, we meet these people and we create friendships that can go over years, and meet up with somebody once every 3 years, or once every year, or once every few months, and yeah. But moving
I'll
past, go ahead.
two things to what you said, man, real quick. One, yeah, some of the best friends I had, I made, running marathons. I mean, some people I just met only because we were running the same pace at a marathon and ran together the whole time. And, we became and stayed best friends. And the funny thing I was going to say about the medals, I had a similar setup in the basement. We're sitting at home one day, and all of a sudden we just hear crash, boom. I was like, what was that? They got too heavy and they just the wall gave up. I mean, they were on studs and everything, but at some point, just be aware that they're gonna get too heavy for the wall. And you know what tipped it? It was the Little Rock, Arkansas, Little Rock Marathon. I mean, if you've done that race, I don't know if you have, but that medal is a freaking dinner plate. And
Yes.
once I put it on there in last March, I believe, yeah, like it didn't take much longer after that, and it just, it, it was, it was the, what did they say? The
Yeah.
tip of the iceberg, and it just went boom, done.
That. Oh gosh. Okay. I got stories, but we'll talk about those later. We got other episodes that we'll save stories for. Otherwise, this will be like a 10-hour episode, and nobody will listen to another episode
Yeah, be
ever
be careful, man. I could
again.
talk for 10 hours. I shouldn't because, I got stuff to do too, but yeah.
So, okay. Now I know in the last episode we did talk about this briefly. Well, we talked about it, but um, and we talked about times and everything. I've ran a 5:30 back in Charlotte. I think I ran a 7.5. So I've ranged, and I think my PR is 4:41 for the full, 1:59:57 for the half. And my slowest, I think, for the full is 7 and 3/4, I think it was, something like that. Anyhow, I've ran those, and I've ran those in Hoka's. I'm trying to look at my shoes. Hoka's, Brooks, Mizuno's, and Asics. What shoes are you currently wearing?
So when I race, I like Nike Alpha Flies. I know they're expensive, but they really have the bounce that not only I think help you, just run more efficient, run faster, but I think also help with recovery. I can run a marathon in Alpha Flies and I can feel good enough to run 15, 14 or 15 miles the next day and still feel good because they're taking some of that impact. So that's what I use for racing, but for training, honestly, anything, because I'll try different shoes for training. I just went to Minnesota and I was gonna race a half marathon, and there was a shoe vendor, and he's like, "I'll give you these shoes for free if you just go like wear them for the half." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah." So now they're training shoes. So yeah, for training, I've done Brooks and Skechers and Mizuno and almost anything. But yeah, for if I had a choice for racing and if I can find them on sale, then it's Nike Alpha Flies.
Good. And then what watch are you which watch are you currently rocking?
I have and it's not like a super expensive watch, but I have the Garmin Instinct Solar. And the reason I like it, it's again basic. It doesn't have like crazy features, but then again, I don't really need crazy features. What I need is, to track my runs and bike rides and stuff and to have, endless battery life. And this one gives me both. Like, when I ran my 55-hour, 12-hour endurance, I'm sorry, 55-mile, 12-hour endurance run. Yeah, I love it. I've never ran for 55 hours before. 55 miles. 12 hours. And at the end of it, I still had like 50 or 60% battery. So, it kind of charges as you run, which is nice. So yeah, I like it.
Okay. And that's one. So what I try to get at with those two questions, because I run with a right now I have a 965 on my wrist and I have a 6X of both Garmin's. I have a 6X that my son is currently using, which oh whatever. It was sitting on my countertop. I wasn't wearing it no more. My son said, "Can I wear it?" I said, "Sure." Either way, so yes, Peter is faster than I am. However, as if you've listened to several episodes, you'll notice that no two people will run in the same exact shoe automatically. It does happen, but it's not, a given. So whatever shoes you're running in, whatever shoes that fit your feet, that's the shoes you need to run in. Don't run in Vaporflies because Peter runs in them. Don't run in Hoka Gaviotas because Miguel runs in them. Go to a local running store if you can and try on different shoes and find a shoe that fits your foot for you. And when you start, if you're new to this activity, if you're new to this hobby, this lifestyle, whatever you want to call it, you can start out with a Timex or your phone. Download Strava. They have a free app, and it's not accurate on the GPS data, but it's helpful. But you can basically you're using your watch. There's a if you have a smartwatch, you have a timer in there. You have a stopwatch. Use your stopwatch on your phone to track your how long you've been running. And to get out the door and to get started, that's all that's really needed. So don't let a $700 watch, $500 watch. Don't think that you have to spend that money, and don't think you need to buy a $270 shoe to run. It helps, it does, but it's not necessary. But sorry, I just try to running can be expensive, but it doesn't automatically have to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's finding the right balance, where I'll say the other side of it, right? I'll be devil's advocate. When I first started running, my first ever marathon. So, like you said, I'm at 38 now. My first ever marathon, Air Force Marathon in 2014, I believe. So man, that was 12 years ago. I ran it in $30 Kmart shoes
What?
because they were on sale for $29.99 and because they were orange and I really liked orange. So the reason I'm saying that is don't do that. That's kind of the other side of it is like don't go too cheap and sacrifice, safety, whatever. Like definitely wear something you're comfortable in, wear something good, but at the same time, yeah, you don't necessarily need the highest and best. You don't need the $300 Alpha Flies. I agree. It's you know, I think it's finding the right balance. It's finding, what's good, what works for you, while obviously still being able to afford food for your family.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've tried Nikes. My feet don't like them. It wasn't a well, I didn't try the Vaporflies, but I know I wear white shoes now. Well, I found out that I need white shoes. I probably needed them the whole time. Um, with white shoes, with white feet, Nike Vaporflies aren't in whites. They only come in normal
Oh,
width.
dude, they're super narrow. They are the narrowest shoes in the world. It took me a while to get past that, and once you do, yeah, you don't really notice it, but yeah, they are insanely narrow. And if that bothers you and you can't get past it, you can't run in them.
Okay, so okay, that being said, um, you've ran Monumental coming on. You're going on. You're closing in on 10. So I assume you'd run it again.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I'm planning on it. I mean, it's one of those that there's very few races that I like doing every year, and Monumental is one of them. Like Flying Pig, I do every year. Air Force, I do every year, but again, it's a mile from my house. Monumental, I do every year. There's very few. I would say like a handful, 3 to 5 races really that I do every year, and Monumental is one of them.
okay. Is there any closing words you'd want to any tidbits you want to drop out there? Any last closing words before we finish up?
Specific about Monumental or just about anything?
Just about well, mainly running. I mean, I guess you could pontificate upon life and being a father and things of that nature, but mainly running. It doesn't have to be about Monumental though.
Got it, got it. Yeah, yeah, I'll make it a little bit about both. I guess, as long as you enjoy it, keep doing it. And, you mentioned being a father. I just ran with my son yesterday. We did a 5K and he PR'd by about 2 to 3 minutes. He ran a 32:57 5K. And it just makes me so happy to see him running because he sees me running and he sees me enjoying running. So that's why, he's running. And, I'm never one to force anybody to do anything, but I am one to, give you my opinion and say, hey, this is what I do. This is why I think this is good. This is why I enjoy this. And, you know, let people kind of decide to do their own thing. That's always my take in life. I'm never going to force anyone to do anything, but hey, you ask me for my opinion and I'll definitely share it. Um, so I enjoy it and hopefully, everybody else does. I know some people don't. Running's not for everybody. But, what I always say, I'll say this about marathons that if you want to run a marathon, you absolutely can and you absolutely will. If you have no interest in running a marathon, and we all know people who don't, then they're never going to. It's all about whether you want to or not.
Mm, very, very accurate. Well, Peter, once again, this is the second episode I've had you on. I've enjoyed both episodes. I look forward to having you on again for other races. Thank you for your time. I really do appreciate that. I look forward to seeing you in a few months. I believe I'll be seeing you at Derby. For everybody else in listener land, if you run Derby Marathon, come out to Bluegrass Brewing Company afterwards, right there near Main and Third Street at the corner of Third and Main. I'll buy you a beverage. If you don't drink beer, I'll buy you a soda. If you do drink beer, I'll buy you a beer, and I'll probably buy you a Derby pie a la mode. Always, always do that for. Oh God, that got expensive 2 years ago. Um, but I made it happen. But anyhow, Peter, really do appreciate you being on here. Really do appreciate your insights on this race and other races. For everybody else in listener land, thank you for giving me your ear holes for this time. Thank you for listening in. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, comment, send it out to your friends, send it out to your loved ones, send it out to your running buddies, send it out to your people you love, people you hate, people you despise, people you don't know. That'd be weird if you said to somebody you don't know, but it could happen. But hit that like button. If you forget to hit the like button, you will show up to a race, get 6 miles into it, and realize that was more than what you thought it was. And now you have a mess to clean up. But remember, to run the race you're in, and forward is a pace. Thank you.